Okay, welcome everyone to seminar 4 and the final seminar in our series on the heart advice of the wisdom Yoginis. So this one is on Ayu-Khandro's record of heartfelt advice. I don't need to go over this too much now because we all know who we are, but that's me. And I think the main thing that we need to know is that I am the Buddhist chaplain at USQ's Multi-Faith Service, and I'm the co-director at Jalu Buddhist Meditation Centre. So today we'll be doing the setting of the intention, and then I will do the lineage prayer, which you can say along with me if you like. You do not need to. And then we'll go over Ayu-Khandro's record of heartfelt advice, which is actually quite short. It's only 2 pages long. I'll talk a little bit about, first off, I'll talk a little bit about who Ayu-Khandro was, and then go through the various parts of her heartfelt advice. And the main themes are: the mind is the root of all, standard Buddhist teaching, the true nature of mind, and then how to practice. So Ayu-Khandro's text, Record of Heartfelt Advice, is a Dzogchen text, but we will be approaching it from a few steps back. So even though it is a Dzogchen text, it has, and we aren't necessarily at that level or in that practicing in that way, there is a lot there for people no matter where they are in their practice path. So there are some very distinct Dzogchen statements, and I will approach those from a kind of a more general way, and talking about it in a way that we can all apply what she's saying. Then we'll do some questions, and then we'll dedicate as per usual. So as always, I'll just set our intention. So we just take a moment to consider why we're here. We're here to connect with our pristine nature, the true nature of mind, so that once we're free of our own disturbing emotions, we can help others to be free as well. So our goal as practitioners of Mahayana Buddhism is to free all beings from suffering. And also included in the all beings, in the category all beings, is of course ourselves. So certainly practicing so that we can be free of disturbing emotions and suffering is a noble reason to practice. So while we just consider why we're here, and we just set our intention, I'll read 2 verses, my favourite 2 verses from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which is a very long poem by Shantideva, who was an 8th century Buddhist master from India. May I be a protector for those without one, a guide for all who journey on the road. May I become a boat, a raft or bridge for all who wish to cross the water. May I be an isle for those desiring landfall, and a lamp for those who wish for light. May I be a place of comfort for those who need to rest, and a servant for all who live in need. So I'll do the Dzogchen lineage prayer. You can, if you're from another lineage, you can visualize or recall your own teachers. If you're Buddhist adjacent, you can just feel a sense of gratitude for the manifestation of wisdom and compassion in your life. If you're a complete atheist, that sense of gratitude can also be quite useful in terms of softening the heart and opening the mind, which is the purpose of the lineage prayers. Pristine Dharmakaya, Padma Amitayas. Perfect Sambhogakaya, all holding Padma. Manifest Nirmanakaya, lake-born Vajra. Please bless my mind, I pray. Emanation of Saraswati, Yeshe Tsogyal. Revealer of the 5 expanses, Zilnon Kipatsal. Universal Lord, Japal Dewa Nyingma. Please bless my mind, I pray. Endowed with blessings and transmissions, Yeme Nidon Wangpo, Lord of all 100 Buddha families, Dzogchen Lingpa, root guru, threefold in his or her kindness. Please bless my mind, I pray. Through the blessings of invoking you in this way, having received the ripening empowerments and with pure samaya, may I perfect approach and completion on the path of generation and completion, and attain the enlightened form of Samantabhadra Padmakara. Sorry about that if that's making you dizzy. So I don't need to necessarily go over this again. I've been over it 3 times already now, why focus on female masters. So what I would like to do this time instead is to just take a moment for you all to consider why female masters are important to you. We have the reasoning in front of us from the Buddha himself. We understand that there are amazing women masters who have not been acknowledged as broadly and widely as they should have been. And we also know that women are 60% or more of the general population, and much higher percentage of the actual Dharma practitioner population. So if you just want to think about why this is important to you, why a focus on female masters is important to you, I think that would be a good idea. And then we'll move on. So who was Sera Khandro? Really good question. Oh, should say Ayu-Khandro there. So Ayu-Khandro was a yogini of both Drukpa and Kagyu lineages from Eastern Tibet, Nangchen. I'm going to show you something here, so I'll stop sharing this and show you something else. Just bear with me. So Ayu-Khandro's real name was Yeshe Tsogyal. She was born in Kham in Eastern Tibet, on the border of Nangchen. She has a very similar story to all of the other female masters that we've talked about, particularly the Tibetan ones. So she, at a very early age, she shows an inclination for Dharma practice. She was quite lucky in that her aunt was a very serious practitioner. So her aunt lived in a cave, in a retreat cave near to her village where she grew up, which I believe was called Taksik, the village. And her aunt was a student of Togden. You may have heard that word before when I've been talking about Jamyang's master, whose name is Togden Amtrin. Togden is a word that means accomplished one, realized one. It's quite a high title to be given, and it's rarely given, in fact. In the Drukpa Kagyu, it is given only to a really small number of practitioners who have been through many, many years of retreat, 20 or so years of retreat. And there also is a female lineage known as the Togdenmas, who likewise went through 2 decades or so of retreat and were considered to be highly accomplished beings. Jetama Tenzin Pamo is actually reinitiating the Togdenma lineage in northern India because it was destroyed by the Chinese invasion and in the Cultural Revolution. Anyway, so Ayu-Khandro, or Yeshe Tsogyal, her aunt, who was a practitioner, was a student of a local Togden. She, at the age of 7, Ayu-Khandro went to live with her aunt in the cave near the Togden and started to receive teachings at that age, so quite young. She knew a lot of really high-level masters, so I'm not sure if these names mean anything to you, but she knew Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. She received teachings from Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo and also Jamyang Kongtrul, and Chogyal Lingpa actually as well. So they're all very incredibly important and very highly revered Buddhist meditation masters of that time. To have received teachings from all of them is fairly extraordinary. So she first visited Gemmin Khyentse Wangpa and received teachings when she was about 14, and then visited him many other times. When she was 19, as happens with young women in Tibet, she was married. Her parents married her off. And this was against her own wishes and against the wishes of her aunt, who was a Yogini practitioner. And then, very similar to the story of Yeshe Tsogyal and Sera Khandro, you know, they have no choice over what happens to them. They're just married off. But within, I think the bio says within 3 years, she was very physically ill. This also happened to Sera Khandro. If you remember, we talked about that last week. She became very, very ill. And it's quite, Tibetans believe that if you have spiritual motivation, a deeply spiritual motivation, and that is stymied or stifled or blocked, it will manifest as physical illness. So her illness was interpreted as her having been married against her will and not being able to practice Dharma in the way that she wanted. So her husband released her, which was probably the only thing he could do because she was very ill and possibly facing death. So then she was released, and then she started practicing Chod, which is spelled C-H-O-D, which means severance or to cut. And the thing that is being cut is one's attachment to the notion, well, to all things, but principally the heart attachment, the main attachment, the most poisonous attachment is attachment to the sense that we exist, the self, that we exist separately, independently, and permanently. That delusion is the heart of our trouble. It's the heart of our worry, the heart of all of our suffering. And so Chod severs that, cuts that off. So she started wandering around Tibet, practicing Chod, which is common at that time, common actually for centuries, for people to abandon all their worldly possessions and just travel around from cemetery to cemetery, funeral ground to funeral ground, practicing Chod, and, you know, begging rather than having a job, you know, and just living very simply out in the wild, practicing Chod. So in her travels, she then met two other fairly important teachers to her. One's by the name of Nyala Pema Doodle, which is my name, of course, but he no relation. And he is, Nyala Pema Doodle is most famous for having achieved the Rainbow Body, which is the highest achievement of the Dzogchen practitioner. She also then received teachings from a really high Drukpa Lama by the name of Adzom Drukpa. So you can sense here what's happening. She is living an itinerant life. She is practicing Chod, this quite intense practice that has at the heart of it the offering. So in order to cut that attachment to self, the heart of Chod is the offering of the self, all of its components, to others. And in the act of generosity, we already know from teachings on the 6 parameters that, you know, the generosity, patient, etc. We know that the act of generosity undermines self-clinging. So to offer oneself itself is the ultimate way to undermine self-clinging. So the heart of Chod is to offer oneself to all other sentient beings. And you do a visual, and there's a visualization involved, and usually yidams or meditational deities, and it's all quite, it can be actually quite elaborate, and usually involves the banging of a drum and the blowing of a thigh bone trumpet and the ringing of a bell and chanting. So it's quite a complicated or whole body practice. Anyway, so then she started to receive Dzogchen teachings from Pema Doodle and Adzom Drukpa. And she, I think at this point, she's maybe 30, 40 years old. And then after wandering all over Tibet and receiving teachings from all these amazing high lamas and practicing Chod in graveyards and in sky burial grounds. She then heads back to the caves where her aunt and her aunt's teacher are, and then starts to do a series of long retreats, quite long. So Ayu-Khandro Pellerin is most famous for having done a series of dark retreats. So having sealed herself into a cave with just a little hole that is then covered, where food and water are slipped in every now and then by someone who's agreed to do that for you. And you sit in total darkness for a very long time. And I believe she did more than a decade of darkness retreat. Point of the darkness retreat is to rely on inner luminosity. This is very simplified here. I'm probably not doing it justice, but it's to rely on luminosity, inner luminosity, rather than on the senses. So to kind of cut off the senses and rely on one's inner luminosity, or abide with one's inner luminosity, rather than be constantly bombarded with all of the perceptions that come in through the sense doors. It also is a very good way of seeing what's in the mind. So if you cut off the sense doors, which is why sometimes sitting with your eyes closed in meditation is quite useful, because it shuts down one of those sense doors. And then what's in the mind becomes more apparent. The quality of the mind as it is now becomes more apparent as you shut down the sense doors. So darkness retreats are very valuable for that reason. She did more than a decade of darkness retreat. And then she's practiced for the rest of her life. She lived to, I believe, 113 or 115. She lived a very long life. And she became the teacher of many very high lamas. Very, very, very high. One of the ones you might recognize the name of, if you've been around the Dharma a while, is Namko Nobu, who taught in the West quite a lot. So he met her when he was young, and it's because of him that we have her brief life story, because she told him and he wrote it down. So, and that brief life story of Ayu-Khandro is published in a book called Women of Wisdom, which is compiled by Sutram Alyon. And Sutram Alyon is a Western woman who became a nun and then transformed into a Nakma of the Drukpa Kagyu lineage and also Nyingma. So if you wanted to read about Ayu-Khandro, she's in that book. There's a section about her in that book, Women of Wisdom. Unfortunately, Sera Khandro is not in that book, I don't believe, because Sera Khandro was, her biography was not translated into English at the time that book was being put together. But I could be wrong, it might be in the book. Okay, so that's a brief story of Ayu-Khandro. I was going to share with you a lovely picture of Ayu-Khandro, but it doesn't seem to want to come up. Let me just try it again. It's not coming up. Okay, so we'll just abandon that idea and we'll go back to our slide. Okay, so as I said, Record of Heartfelt Advice is only 2 pages long, but that doesn't mean it's not potent and profound. There's a lot in it. As with all of these pith instructions, there's a lot in them, but the things that I'm going to kind of draw out are these things here on the screen. The mind is the root of all, the true nature of the mind. So she actually describes in quite a bit of detail what the true nature of mind is, and then also how to practice. Now, as I said, she's talking about how to practice in a Dzogchen way, but we're going to talk about that in a more accessible, anybody way. So there is the approach or the style or the attitude towards practice that Ayu-Khandro shares in this is applicable to every kind of practice and by everyone. So where there's quite this sort of esoteric Dzogchen language, I will pull back and talk about it in a more approachable way. So the opening verses to Ayu-Khandro's record of heartfelt advice is actually written by someone else. So when it was written down, probably her nun student added this, which is, again, it's a homage. So there's always a little Guru Yoga homage at the beginning of all teachings in the Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And this is, even though this is not by Ayu-Khandro, this is by her student, it gives you a sense of who Ayu-Khandro was. So it says, from the primordial purity of infinite hospitality free of artifice, and this is slightly strange translation, that word hospitality there, it's a little idiosyncratic. By showing diverse illusory forms, she is completely euphoric. With the elixir of the great joy of non-duality, we bow to the supreme Dakini, Dorje Poldron. So remember, Dorje Poldron is Ayu-Khandro's formal name. So that in the first line here, it says from the primordial purity of infinite hospitality free of artifice. So primordial purity is a Dzogchen phrase which refers to the perfect state, the natural state of things, when that is not sort of tainted or stained or inhibited in any way by dualistic mind. When dualistic mind is allowed to settle and quieten down, this primordial purity, which is actually in Tibetan kadag, it shows instantly. So it's always there, this primordial purity, but it's obscured by all the thinking, sensing, and reacting we do. So in this homage to Ayu-Khandro, it's stating, this is very Dzogchen language, it's stating that she's a great master of the highest kind, who rests in primordial purity at all times and displays all kinds of like forms and is euphoric. But that's, again, I think translation-wise, that's a slightly strange choice of word, with the elixir of the great joy of non-duality. So it's basically saying she's fully enlightened. Her mind is not dualistic anymore. There's not that constant thinking, feeling, and sensing that is then misinterpreted as a self, as a being, or identified with it. We identify with that very closely and then misidentify that as a being, as a self. Anyway, so I think that is really interesting, and it's it sets up that this teaching is actually a Dzogchen teaching, even though we may not be actually approaching it in that way. Now these are Ayu-Khandro's words here. Sorry, I've got a little bit of dust in my eyes. I'll just read through, even though you can read through yourselves. It says, arrive at the clarity that all that constitutes the realms of becoming, known as samsara, and the peace of liberation, known as nirvana, has just one root, one's own mind. So we'll just talk about that a little bit. So this is, the Buddha said this in his early teachings. He said, everything arises in the mind, everything is led by the mind. And it's sometimes translated as with our thoughts we make the world, which is not actually a great translation. But this statement is from the perspective of a practitioner. So it says, arrive at the clarity that all that constitutes the realms of becoming. That phrase, the realms of becoming, is referring to the Bardo states. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the Bardo states, but there are 6 Bardo states living. So from the moment of being born to the moment of dying. And then there is dreaming. And then there is also the Bardo of samadhi or meditation. And then there's the Bardo that they're referring to here, and there's Bardo of dying. And then the Bardo they're referring to here is then there's also the Bardo of luminosity. And then the one after that is this Bardo, the Bardo of becoming or rebirth. So what is being said here is that everything in the realm of where things are born, live and die, so everything, in essence, everything, that is samsara, that is that cycle, the realm of becoming, or the Bada of becoming, is also called the Bada of rebirth. So this space in which beings are born, live lives of misery and die, are reborn, live lives of misery and die, are reborn, live lives of misery and die. Everything inside that space that we call samsara, the illusion of an existent world that is permeated by suffering, everything in that has its root in our own mind. Everything. So everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch has its origin in one's mind. This is kind of a profound notion. And then it also says everything that we know of as the peace of liberation that we call nirvana, which is what is nirvana? Nirvana is the freedom from suffering. It's liberation from suffering. So everything that we know as liberation, as nirvana, as enlightenment, also has one root, the mind. So this first paragraph is quite intense, quite profound. It's saying that everything, both that which causes suffering, or what we call samsara, and that which we call nirvana, which is true liberation, all has one root, the mind. So the image that you see there is of Garab Dorje, who's the first Dzogchen master. You can see he's emanating rainbows. Rainbows are he's the one at the bottom. Rainbows are a symbol of Dzogchen. And above him is Vajrasattva, who is the deity most closely associated with Dzogchen. And above Vajrasattva is Kuntazangpo and Kuntazangmo. Kuntazangpo is the blue Buddha there, and the blue Buddha represents our pristine awareness, our unsullied Buddha nature. And the white female deity there, Kuntazangmo, she represents the source of everything. She represents profound wisdom, everything fantastic and wonderful, from which everything manifests. That is Kuntazangmo. So the reason I've got that image there of Garab Dorje is because this first paragraph refers to the last thing that Garab Dorje said before he left this world. And it's known as the 3 statements that strike the vital point, or variations thereof, where he basically summarized the entire path, and especially Dzogchen, in 3 phrases. And the first phrase is to know the true nature of everything, the mind and everything, which is this pristine awareness represented by Kuntazangpo and Kuntazangmo. So this first paragraph is like a profound Dzogchen statement, but also we can approach it in a very, what's the word? In a very practical way. Our perception, what we think is the world is just our perception. That's important to understand on every level of the Buddhist path, whether it's Dzogchen, Sutra, Mahayana, or Vajrayana, it doesn't matter. That point, what we think of as the world is just our perception. That's a really important point to take to heart. When we understand that, we understand something quite profound, which is that actually the true nature of things, the absolute nature, whatever you would like to call that, we never directly perceive because our dualistic mind is in the way. So we never connect with absolute reality because all we connect with is our perception. So it's really important to recognize this, so that each and every day, no matter what we do or where we go or how we're feeling, all we meet is our own mind. Everywhere we go, that's all we're meeting. Everything we do, that's all we're engaging with. It's all the mind. So when you understand that, there's a fairly quick release of clinging. When we understand that this is all perception, that actually in reality, we've got no idea what's going on. Actually, what's really going on. This is all just our perception. We cling less, we react less. We are attached less. We are averse to things less. Everything lessens because we understand this is just the mind. It's not that there's not a reality. This is not the point. It's that the reality, the absolute nature, is not what we're relating to. We're relating to an illusion. And actually, illusion is a nice way of putting it. We're relating to a fundamental and profound delusion. And that is what we meet whenever we're awake and also when we're asleep and dreaming. So it's really important for us to get this, that everything that we experience is just our own perception. So when we have reactions to things, we're not reacting to anything except for our own mind. So we're getting angry. We think we're getting angry at someone out there who did something that we think was, worth our anger, when in reality we're just getting angry at our own perception of something, which is probably very distorted, almost 100% guaranteed it's very distorted. So it's important. This is important because we can then lessen our vulnerability to those reactions. So when we yearn for something desperately, if we remind ourselves, hey, you're yearning for your own mind. The thing you're yearning for is just your perception. It lessens it. It's a delusion, the thing you're yearning for. And also when we're strongly averse to something, it's just our own mind we're averse to, our own perceptions. So it really lessens all those reactions, and it means that we can start to actually get a handle on our behaviors, our reactions, and the stuff that is going on in our mind. So at a very sutra level, this statement is important. Sutra is like the first step in the Buddha path. So on a very sutra level, this is really important. And then as you progress through the various different types of Buddhism and also different kinds of meditation, this doesn't get any less important. It remains very important. So then at the bottom there, Ayu-Khandro says, if this mind is examined, it is found to be without any inherent existence. So what she's saying there is something quite profound, which is that if you look for the mind, so I've just been talking about our perception, I've just been talking about our perception of external things. So now Ayu-Khandro, how that's just, our perception of external things is just an illusion or a delusion. It's our own mind. All we meet is our own mind. Now, Ayu-Khandro is saying, okay, so examine that mind. If the mind is the root of everything, of all suffering, of everything we perceive, of the world, and of nirvana or liberation or enlightenment, the mind is the root of both those things. Well, then let's look at that. Let's turn our attention to the mind. And then what can we see when we look at the mind, or when we try to find the mind, is that the mind itself is also illusory. If you try to find the mind, and I'm saying these things, but we need to do this practice ourselves. We need to look for it. But when you do look, there you can't find anything. And you need to go through this process of, is the mind thinking? Those of us who meditate know the answer to that quite quickly. No, because when you meditate, thinking stills. Sometimes to the point where there's no thinking for quite long periods of time, and yet there's a lucid awareness. So no, the mind is not just thinking. Is the mind sensations? No, because we still have a mind that dreams when we're not feeling any sensations. Like when we're asleep, the body is completely numb. It's the sense doors are closed down, the body's still, but still the mind dreams. So, okay, so no, it's not senses. The mind is not in the senses. It's not in the perception. Is it then in the feelings, our emotions? No, because again, they can come and go, and yet something abides. There's still something that's there. But then when we look for that something that's there, it's ungraspable. It can't be held onto. It can't be located. It can't be found and held and labeled and kept. So the answer to this question, okay, so what is the mind, is that it is empty. So it's without any inherent existence. That doesn't mean there is no mind. It means that it is illusory, ungraspable, ephemeral, highly changeable, highly fluid, and completely driven by external stimuli. Often when we think about our thoughts, we think that they're internal, that they somehow are part of us. But actually every single thought, every single emotion, every single feeling is triggered by an external event in the memory or in the now. So when we think of our thoughts as like our internal world, that's a big mistake. It's just all triggered by the outside. What's truly our nature has nothing to do with thinking, feeling, and sensing stuff. It's beyond that. So Ayu-Khandro, so just to summarize these first two paragraphs, two little bits, everything is of the mind, everything, and therefore it makes sense that we pay attention to the mind. We sit in meditation, allow all of the dualistic stuff, thinking, feeling, sensing, to drop down, and then we rest in what's left, what's beyond mentation or underneath mentation. And that's the true nature. And there we'll find the true nature of mind. So, but even if we try to examine the dualistic mind, like where it is, where we find it, we will not find it. And that, it can be scary for people because they're like, oh, like there's a sense of like non-existence that arises, or a fear of non-existence. But it's also quite liberating because it means this thing that bothers us so much, all this churning thought and emotion that is 99.9% harmful, is not inherent to us. It's triggered by external things. It's all external. It just rises, mucks about for a bit, and then dissipates. So that's really important that we get that, and that we investigate that, and we understand this thing that we think is us. It's just some ephemeral passing silliness. I described it the other day to someone as a lunatic who's wandered into your house. No, the dualistic mind is like a lunatic who's just wandered into your house, you know. And our response to that lunatic is not to be hostile or anything, but to be kind, but to understand this lunatic doesn't belong here, you know. So we'll move on. So now Ayu-Khandro moves on to talking about the true nature of the mind. So she's talked about find the dualistic mind. She's saying you can't find it. But then she's talking about there is not one single sentient being anywhere whose ground or basis is not the Buddha nature or heart of all the Sugatas. Sugatas is another name for Buddhas. So here she's saying, okay, so samsara and nirvana have their origin in mind. The mind can't be found. So what is actually the essence of beings? And she's saying it is their Buddha nature, the heart of all the Sugatas, the Buddha's essence. So the Buddha nature is another word for the true nature of mind. So then she says, however, due to the circumstances of the movement of the karmic wind, this is a very Tibetan thing, arising from the mental activity generated by ignorance. Now, ignorance is many things, but at its heart, ignorance is the delusion that we exist as separate, inherently existing, permanent beings. That's what ignorance is. There's lots of other kinds of ignorance too, but that's the main one. So when we believe that, then karma arises. And what is karma? Karma is like, essentially karma is the habit of the mind. What's the mind's habit? Our mind's habit currently is to believe in itself as an existent entity, and to believe that there's stuff out there, and that therefore we can do stuff to impact stuff out there, and therefore stuff out there can impact us. So the essence of karma is, it's the habit of the mind. So for example, as a little bit of an example, so you can't get an apple tree from a lemon seed. So the mind, right, reforms in every moment, and it reforms according to what its previous habit was. So if your mind is angry and clingy and greedy and jealous, the next mind will be, in the next moment, the mind will be angry and clingy and jealous. So it's just, you're going to, you know, a lemon seed produces a lemon. So this moment of mind produces the next moment of mind. That's karma. There's this habit. And so what she's saying here is that because of that habit of clinging to this idea of the self as being inherently real, then this self is perpetuated. This karma, or the habit of clinging to the idea of a self, is perpetuated and keeps going. And you're just trapped. You're just trapped then in this cycle of suffering. So, and she says, all beings, because of that ignorance, are enveloped by the net of dualism. We know what dualism is because I rabbit on about it all the time. It's this mind that sees itself as here and other stuff as there, even though we know on a quantum physics level, there's no here and there. You know, when you break everything down beyond atoms and stuff like that, like, stuff doesn't exist in that way. So, but the mind, the dualistic mind, don't like quantum physics and don't like Buddhism. It believes it exists, and it believes it exists here, and there's other stuff over there. And the minute there's other stuff over there, it starts to go, I like some of that stuff and I really hate some of the other stuff. So that problem arises of attachment, clinging, which leads to pain when we lose or can't gain it, and aversion, which leads to pain and suffering when it comes to us, that thing we are averse to, and suffering when we can't get rid of it, when it won't go away. So all of our suffering comes from that ignorance, and then we're in this net of dualism, of attachment and aversion and self and other. And then we just wander, we cycle ceaselessly in that, on that hamster wheel, which is not a fun hamster wheel at all. So Ayu-Khandro goes on to say the actual situation of the mind. So she's talking about what the mind's really like. The mind itself, or the truth, Nyingpo. Nyingpo means heart essence, essentially, of the primordial ground or basis, bodhicitta. The mind as it is from the very beginning uninfluenced by in any way, by the causal force of discriminating between good and bad, and thus is self-present. Here we've got some very Dzogchen language. So let's make this accessible. What she's saying here is the true nature of mind. So beyond that dualistic mind that thinks I'm here and you're there, and that wants, and hates, or fears. You know, beyond that, the true nature of ourselves is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a word that means awakened mind, and that's very poetic. But in essence, what it means is a mind that understands emptiness, and in the understanding of emptiness releases. This is not good language. So co-emergent wisdom of emptiness and full expression of compassion. So bodhicitta is the mind of a Buddha, right? A Buddha's mind is a bodhicitta mind. And that mind understands, it's free of that dualistic net, understands the empty nature of things, and has only one real movement or expression, which is boundless loving kindness and compassion. Boundless meaning it doesn't need an object for it to flow. flow is probably not the right word, but language does not describe this stuff really very well. So it doesn't, we don't, so for us to feel loving kindness and compassion, we need to see someone in front of us who we feel deserves it. You know, oh, this person is suffering, therefore we feel kind and we feel compassion, right? This is not what bodhicitta is. The loving kindness and compassion that is at the heart of bodhicitta, or is the expression of bodhicitta, has no referent. It doesn't need that. It's boundless. It doesn't discriminate, so it shines like on everyone like the sun, but it also doesn't need to be triggered by some external entity, because remember, the awakened mind doesn't perceive things in that way. So it's just ever-flowing, boundless loving kindness and compassion. So what Ayu-Khandro is saying here, if we kind of step back from the Dzogchen language, is at our heart, and quite literally, we are Buddhas. In our true nature, the true nature of our mind is bodhicitta. So there's lots of different words for the true nature of mind. So the one you might have heard me use before is Rigpa, but there's also Sugatagarbha, Tathagatagarbha, Buddha nature itself, like absolute nature, true nature, ultimate reality. There's so many different words for this. But this one, I think, is quite dear to my heart, and it's actually something that you see in Dzogchen teachings. This idea that bodhicitta, which we see as a basic component to practicing Dharma. So if any of you practice in the Tibetan tradition, you know that bodhicitta or compassion is something we do from the beginning. It's a very beginning level thing. But it's also the fruit. So it's ground, our true nature. It's the path. So we practice bodhicitta because that's our true, in order to become realized. And then when we become realized, it's the fruit. Bodhicitta is the fruit. So it's ground, path, and fruit. So all of that collapses together. So here Ayu-Khandro is saying our true nature is bodhicitta. True nature of mind is bodhicitta as it is, without building it. We don't need to do anything to build it up, to make it better or greater, to make it more shiny. We don't have to do anything. We just have to step out of the way, allow this dualistic mind to just settle and relax. And that bodhicitta is there, present already. And it says here, it's uninfluenced in any way by the causal force. What's causal force? Karma, of discriminating between good and bad, and thus is self-present. So when I was talking before about bodhicitta, it has no referent. It doesn't matter. It's not concerned with good or bad. It shines on everything equally. So there's some other stuff in here about, not discriminating between good and bad and stuff like that, that is, that requires a bit more kind of deeper analysis, but we don't really have time, so we'll move on. But the last phrase there is self-present. So that's also a Dzogchen type term, but really what that means is it's uncreated. You don't need to, it's not made. It just is, which kind of defies a lot of what we believe about the world. We believe that things have to be made, but the true nature, the ultimate nature, or the actual real ultimate bodhicitta, not just ordinary kindness or compassion, is self-present. Doesn't need to be built or made. It's already there, and it's beyond ordinary dualism. Well beyond that. And then she says it is free of any meditation, which belongs to a path, and thus is self-liberating. So here she's saying, again, quite Dzogchen language, but really, if we just step back, all that she's saying here is that you don't need to kind of, once you've recognized your true nature and are able to rest in that true nature or rest in bodhicitta, you don't need techniques to make it happen. It's actually a total relaxation. So there's a point, we need meditation to get there, but there's a point where we need to drop our meditation, which doesn't mean to not sit. It means to, you drop the the object of your meditation, the thing that your attention's on. You drop that. You drop any idea that you're sitting in meditation, and you just rest. Just allow the mind to rest, and as soon as it rests in its nature. If it truly rests, which is a very, 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 very tricky thing for most of us to do, to truly rest. And self-liberating means when stuff arises in the mind. So enlightened beings, because the dualistic mind is triggered by external stuff, and sentient and enlightened beings are, of course, in this realm. There is stuff going on. Then thoughts arise for them too, but they self-liberate immediately. What that means is they don't need to apply any kind of effort to settle the mind. So now, instead of thought being this toxic, distracting misery maker, which is what the dualistic mind is for most of us, for them, thought and sensations and perceptions become ornaments. Everything just makes them more compassionate. Everything just makes them more stable in their nature. It becomes very different. It's a very different thing that's going on here. And then she says, basically, it's free of accomplishments because it's already self-perfected. Your true nature is already self-perfected. You don't need to make it shinier. It is complete from the very beginning. So there's nothing you need to do to make it bigger, better, brighter. It is as it is. All we need to do is rest, and it will be evident. We will be able to abide in it. And how do we rest? We rest through meditation. It's very, very simple. Very, very, very simple, which is possibly why it seems quite incomprehensible to many people that to just rest, to just sit quietly or walk quietly or wash the dishes quietly, with the mind not going on, no matter what you do, to do it with a rested mind, with a mind that you're not interfering with, that you're not stimulating, that you're not enmeshed in, you're not in that net of dualism. You're just at rest, no matter what you're doing. That is really very, 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 very tricky for most of us because we self-identify. We think that the thinking and the feeling and the sensing is us, but it is not. So we need to just step back from that and just allow our minds to rest. And then it's complete already. So the true nature is complete already. Nothing needs to be done. There's no kind of complicated tantric practice you need to do to make your true nature more impressive. It's already complete and has always been. So really all we need is to do this very simple practice of meditation. And there are a couple of other little things that we'll talk about in a minute that will make your meditation deeper, faster, which are a part of the Tibetan path. All right, so really what Ayu-Khandro has let us know here so far is that it's our clinging to the dualistic mind as though we're a person, as though we're us. It's the problem. The resolution to that problem is, that problem is in the mind, and the resolution to that problem is also in the mind. And if we investigate the mind, we find, where is it? Can it be found? And then if we actually understand the true nature of every single being is the Buddha nature, which is bodhicitta. There are subtle differences between these terms. So it's not like wise to just use them completely interchangeably because they have nuances, but they are referring to the same multifaceted jewel at the heart of us. So Buddha nature implies our enlightenment potential, right? So that's that aspect of that jewel at the heart of us. Bodhicitta implies our ability to our empty awareness, our empty knowledge, and our compassionate nature. So these words all point to different aspects of the same quite profound thing that actually probably can't be described with a single word really. So it's probably good that we've got multiple words. So they aren't exactly, the same. They don't mean exactly the same thing, but they point to the same truth. Okay. Now she continues talking about what bodhicitta or the Buddha nature is right here. It is free of communication by language and thus is beyond the realms of signs. So here, this is what I was sort of saying before. It's actually quite hard to talk about this because it is not of the dualistic mind and language is of the dualistic mind. As soon as you start to use language, you've got subject, object, verb, noun, all of that stuff starts to come into play, and it immediately gives us a false impression, I'm just going to turn my phone up, sorry, of what the Buddha nature or the true nature of mind is. It gives us a false impression. It automatically, when you say, because we're talking in languages, when you say the true nature of mind, if you haven't experienced it directly, you're already sort of thinking about something that is possessed, that can be held, that is not right. And so it's not accessible to measurement by thought, so you can't use thought, the dualistic mind, to find it or measure it or understand it, which is part of our problem. We're always trying to understand everything through the dualistic mind, which actually can't understand anything. And it's a great freedom from the intellect. So it's not that it's dull or dumb, the true nature, it's beyond those kinds of ideas. But we can't intellectually get it. It's like the taste of an apple. You cannot explain the taste of an apple without using this word sign here, or signifiers. You can't describe anything without a chain of signifiers, a chain of signs, a chain of words. So when you try to describe the taste of an apple, you have to use words like sweet, juicy, these words that all mean other things, other words, other signs. When you go to those signs, so if you say an apple is sweet, go to the sign sweet or the signifier sweet. So what's sweet? Then you get more words, sugary. And then you go, okay. So just this endless chain of deferring, actually moving away from the thing. So there's no way to use language to describe it or measure it or get it or understand it or even experience it. Language is not the tool. So, and then she says it's completely beyond all the elaborations of the 8 limiting positions. The 8 limiting positions are philosophical ideas, which we don't really need to go into because we've already said the dualistic mind can't get it. No philosophical idea, no position or view or philosophy can catch it. Impossible. And thus is the great inseparability of awareness and emptiness. So this is this idea of bodhicitta as co-emergent wisdom. Wisdom of what? Wisdom of emptiness. The knowing, the direct knowing of emptiness, not intellectual knowing, the direct knowing of emptiness, and awareness. Not dualistic, not thinking mind, awareness. So what's beyond thinking mind? So you cannot describe it, find it, measure it, map it out with the dualistic mind. You have to let the dualistic mind settle and kind of go to sleep. And then what's left is pristine awareness. And then that direct experience, there's no way of really saying it in language that makes any sense at all. But that direct experience of one's own true nature, of Rigpa, brings wisdom and releases compassion, boundless compassion. So this is why meditation is so super important, because it's the only way. All right, so then she says, whatever occurs, it remains happily in a state of unchanging original clarity, and thus is self-liberating in its own place. So again, this is more of the same. But it's interesting that she says remains happily in the state of unchanging original clarity. So when we talk about the true nature of mind, they talk about things like stillness, clarity, and movement. It has these 3 aspects. So here she's pointing to that, but she's also sort of saying, when you rest in the true nature of mind, or you give rise to ultimate bodhicitta, then there is contentment, there is joy, and everything that manifests because of external triggers is just self-liberated in its place, just instantly. It's all just ornament of the enlightened nature. So this is all kind of high stuff, but what we need to sort of get from this in terms of where we are at is to just understand that pursuing analytical frameworks, you know, learning lots of stuff, reading book after book after book after book, this will not help you to be free. It will give you a little bit of context, enable you to talk to your Dharma friends. You know, it's not bad, but it will not liberate you. The only thing that will liberate you is to sit in meditation gently, without turning it into like extreme sport, and relax. Let the mind just settle of its own accord. Essentially just chill out. And there are some things you can do to drive that, to make it so that your heart opens more quickly, your mind settles more quickly, but they are not, the things that do that are not learning lots of philosophy, not learning how to debate, not disagreeing with people who are in other schools or other philosophies or other religions or other political parties or other families even. That is not going to help you at all. It is about letting go of all that, in fact. Any kind of like grasping and clinging to ideas is a problem. So there are some basic ideas that we need to get our head around. But then we need to directly experience those things. Those basic ideas are not fancy things. Impermanence. Everyone knows this. But you need to really, really feel it. Emptiness, the lack, things having a lack of inherent existence. If you can't get your head around that through the Buddhist way of describing it, check out quantum physics a little bit. Not like, don't get a physics degree, because you need to sit. You don't need to go and get a physics degree, you know. But quantum physics describes it in a way that I think the Western mind can kind of get quite quickly. It's like, okay, yes, this is, you know, we know about atoms, we know about protons, we know about quarks. We know that stuff is not at all what it seems when we look deeply. So you need to understand and take to heart impermanence. We need to take to heart emptiness, the lack of inherent self-nature of things. We need to take to heart the importance of compassion. Really, and that's it. There's not much more. There's a few other little things that can add rocket fuel to the process, which we can talk about in a little minute. But here, Ayu-Khandro, she's just saying it's all about letting go. It's not about accumulating knowledge, ideas, and stuff. And she says, however, due to the illusion of diverse thoughts in the manner of a dream, sentient beings are led to all the sites of existence in samsara. When you have seen your own origin, so the true nature of your own mind, by the truth of that, due to emptiness, the way of being of how you are is what is known as Buddha, and you won't go searching for anything else. So here again, she's saying, okay, we have all this illusion of diverse thinking and thoughts and feelings and emotions and sensations, which is a dream, but we're led around by that dream. We're led around by that delusion. So, but then she says, but when you've seen your own origin, when you've recognized the true nature of your own mind, and then because you recognize the empty nature of it, right, you recognize that your own nature is Buddha nature, and you won't go searching for anything else. So she's saying here that we're driven to search constantly by the dualistic mind, and sometimes we bring that on the path with us into Dharma, not sometimes, like often, and that becomes book learning how to debate, getting all kinds of empowerments, doing all kinds of fancy practices, you know, traveling here, traveling there, accumulating teachers like they are pets, you know, competing with each other about how great our guru pets are. You know, it all becomes rather awful. So she's just saying, if you just sit, recognize the true nature of your own mind, you'll recognize your own Buddha nature, you will not go anywhere else. You will not want anything else. There's nothing else. And then she says, indeed, the manner of abiding of the ground. So this is another sort of like, not slightly, but totally Dzogchen term. So the ground, what she's talking about here, the ground is the true nature of everything. It's got lots of different names. And when you rest in the ground, the dualistic mind is not evident, the sense of self is not evident. So she's saying when you abide in the ground or rest in the true nature of mind, rest in Rigpa, whatever, kind of rest, sit in actually true bodhicitta, whatever phrase you want to use, that cannot be altered by anything that anything out here does or anything in there does. That abiding in the ground of the true nature is impervious to what goes on around. The manner of abiding just is, and with it there is no interruption of the spontaneous flow, and thus there is no wavering from it. So the spontaneous flow, it's an interesting translation actually. There's this idea, when we talk about primordial purity or kadag, there's also this idea of what's called spontaneous presence. So and I think here that's pointing to that. So which means when you recognize true nature of mind, when you're abiding that true nature of mind, nothing external can distract you. The mind is just in a state of spontaneous presence, and there's just the true nature itself. There's no wavering from that. There's nothing that can distract you. There's nothing that can interrupt you or break you out of that. So this is essentially a Buddha, a being who can do that, abide in the true nature and remain in remain there, and that is a Buddha. So that is a Buddha. So in essence, she's saying that that's what we have to look forward to. Recognize the true nature of mind, understand that your nature is the same as the Buddha's, rest there. And then eventually that will become unwavering. And there'll just be, Buddha nature. You'll be a Buddha in essence. And in reality, not just in essence. So now she sort of moves on to telling us how to practice. Again, this is quite Dzogchen-y, but we can approach this from a sort of more, easy kind of way. Not more easy, more fundamental or basic kind of way. So having confidence in this ally. What's the ally? Your true nature is your ally. When mistakes and confusion occur, you will not go looking for other allies. So if anything happens, we're practicing, we're not Buddhas yet. We haven't recognized our Buddha nature yet. We're not able to abide in our true nature yet, permanently yet. And so when she's saying, when stuff happens, while we're still on the path, don't go looking for other allies, just rely on that ally, the ally of your own true nature, your own Buddha nature. And when good or bad thoughts of whatever kind arise, without artificiality or adulteration, remain shining in your own place. So this is just about resting. Not pursuing thoughts of the past, not entertaining thoughts of the future, not getting unsettled by, becoming angry by our own perception, becoming attracted to our own perception, becoming fearful of our own perception. It just means remain shining in your own place. Just settle, petal. But continuously keeping to just that state of clarity and awareness, which is in between every single thought anyway, in between every single emotion we have anyway, in between every single sensation that comes and goes anyway. You just need to settle there. You'll experience the self-liberation of whatever occurs. So this is something that, again, Dzogchen language, but it really just means something quite simple. Every single thought rises, it has a kind of a peak, then it kind of breaks like a wave, and then it dissolves. Of its own accord, you don't need to do anything. That is its nature. It does not abide forever. It does not last forever. It has no inherent existence. It just is a blip. And it will go away without you doing anything. You don't need to do a thing at all. So as that process, as a dualistic mind sort of settles and that process kind of speeds up, probably not a great phrase, speeds up, stillness emerges, then all those waves on the lake settle down and becomes serene, you know. And then a little ripple might come, but it immediately is reabsorbed back into the surface, you know what I mean? So it's like self-liberation. You don't need to do anything, just need to look, if that, and it goes. So, and by developing, so then she continues, by developing a continuous practice of the non-meditation of thusness. So that's, again, Dzogchen language, the afflictions will gradually diminish. So she's just saying, just rest. You know, you're not applying in your meditation all kinds of constitutive things. You're not focusing on something really tightly. You're not observing the thought, analyzing the thought, playing with the thought, understanding the thought, or you're not doing anything. Pema Sambhava said the best approach to the mind is to just leave it alone. So you just leave it alone and you just rest in the now. And then everything, the afflictions, so all the disturbing thoughts and emotions, clinging to self, all that stuff just gradually diminishes. It's very simple, very, very simple. And, you know, on this level, you know, we're just talking about shamatha here. You know, we're not talking about some high level thing. So we can apply these ideas of just letting things settle, just relaxing to any level of practice. You don't have to be doing some high level thing. Anyway, however, although we practice to always abide in thusness, just as a sweet sound requires the string to be just right, if you find you are tuned too tightly, so concentrating too tightly, sitting too stiffly or too loosely, so you know, you're nodding off, or you're letting your minds just run all over the place, you know, just your mind's just all over the place, you're not really aware that you've been distracted, then you must maintain the state of undistracted recollection. All that means is remember the true nature of mind and bring yourself back. Just sit. So at first, that looks like you have an object that you're using for your meditation, whether you're breathing or something that you're looking at in front of you. So it just means to gently bring yourself back to that object. Later, when you drop the object, so you've achieved some level of meditative stability, then you can drop that stuff, and anytime you kind of sit down, the mind will just settle. You'll just be there. So, but even still, there'll be sometimes distractive things happening, and Ayu-Khandro is just saying, yeah, if that happens, just remember, you know, that you're meditating. Essentially, remember your awareness. Bring yourself back to your awareness. She continues, it is not useful to hold to any kind of analytic contemplation, as we've just been talking about. So it's not about analysing thoughts and finding out what they are and what this means or what's no. Therefore, let awareness be naked and uncovered. So again, this is just awareness is already naked and uncovered in between all the thinking, feeling, and sensing that we do. So it's not like you have to strip anything off for awareness to be naked and uncovered. Don't do anything except relax. Just let the dualistic mind settle. So, and not do anything with it. The very state of the original knowing is fundamental nature of mind or Buddha nature, of that instant actualizing is to be experienced in its fullness. This is Dzogchen language again. So here she's just saying, you know, if you just rest in your own pure awareness right now, you'll get to know your true nature in its fullness. And then she says, this is lifeblood of practice. So she's not saying, you know, go and get a whole heap of empowerments and get a drum and a bell and a trumpet and a whole heap of other paraphernalia and do all kinds of elaborate rituals. She's not saying that at all. She's saying actually simplify everything and just sit and just remember the true nature of all beings, which is your true nature, and allow that to come forward and allow the dualistic mind to recede and settle and go to sleep. It's really quite simple. That's probably something to try to get in. Sorry. So even though this is a Dzogchen talk, Dzogchen teaching, it is actually quite interesting how this stuff applies to every level of practice. So we don't have to think of this as a Dzogchen teaching, really, even though it is. We can just approach this as simple meditators. Like, when you're in the Nyingma lineage, it's quite hard to encounter anything that doesn't talk about Dzogchen. But at the same time, because Dzogchen is considered the highest, the greatest, the most sacred, it's considered to be something that only very advanced practitioners do. It's considered you have to do a whole heap of other stuff as preliminaries beforehand. But that doesn't mean we can't get something from the Dzogchen teachings at whatever level we are at. And I think this teaching really shows that there is great advice here for a practitioner at every level. And that advice does sound quite Dzogchen-y, but it's also just plain common sense. You know, relax, rest, allow your nature to shine. You know, any parent says this stuff to their kid. Just be yourself. Just relax and be yourself. You know, this is all it is, to just relax and be ourselves, not ourselves, to be what we are, not who we are. To be that boundless compassion, to be that limitless wisdom. And we don't need any kind of like fancy schmancy stuff to get there. It's a very simple approach, and I think a very democratic approach, because you can approach this stuff totally from the sutra level. You know, just sit, let the mind settle, just don't fuss about with thoughts, don't get swept away by them either. Recognize that this is an illusion, that's a sutra level teaching, but remind ourselves constantly that what we perceive is just a perception. Understand that the root of everything we experience is the mind. The root of our freedom is also the mind, so we need to pay attention to it. We need to place our actual awareness on the mind itself and see what it is. So this is really very simple stuff, and we don't have to think it's all kind of high and beyond us. And then she wraps up by saying, there are many who accept and explain that all phenomena are empty. Yes, there are. But simultaneous awareness and emptiness that is shown at the time of initiation, I'll just explain this all in a minute, I'll just go through it, is your own current presence, which is beyond being judged as existing. Your nature is instant naked liberation, unartificial, instantly at ease, infinite completion. Dzogchen, this is it. So here she's saying, there's all these philosophers out there talking about emptiness. And there are very elaborate philosophies about emptiness, and there are contradicting philosophies about emptiness, in fact. And there's so much that you could spend an entire lifetime learning it. And she's saying that, you know, it doesn't really matter, because she then goes, this simultaneous awareness and emptiness. So she's saying here that that's bodhicitta, true nature of mind, is simultaneous compassion or awareness and emptiness. That is shown at the time of initiation is your own current presence. So what's initiation? That is when a teacher or guide points out to you what the true nature of mind is, and you get it. That's the true ultimate initiation. So they're pointing out what the true nature of mind is, and you get it. You're able to rest in the true nature of mind. And all it is your own current presence. So your own current awareness without all the other stuff, thinking, feeling, sensing, going on. That's all it is. So she's saying awareness of emptiness and true bodhicitta are found there. You don't have to do all this philosophizing about emptiness and stuff. It just comes in that moment that you recognize the true nature of mind, and then it unfolds. And then she really drives it home by saying your nature is instant naked liberation, unartificial, instantly at ease, infinite completion. Dzogchen. This is it. So, although it's clearly a Dzogchen statement, there's no way getting around that. The idea that our own awareness is the point is in the sutras. The Buddha talked about this in the sutras. These are not secret teachings. It's in a number of the early sutras, in fact. So, and then she says, furthermore, there is no other way of opening with emptiness. You can turn towards awareness of impossibility or not. So that's sort of like talking about people who are like really getting into kind of the philosophy of emptiness, and they can either, you know, open to their own nature or not. You know, that there's no other way of understanding emptiness, actually. Like we were talking before, there's no philosophy can really describe it. No amount of argument or debate will make it clear. There's no way to measure or find it. There's no way to have it, grasp it, hold it, own it. You either move into the infinite possibility of your own awareness and understand all, or you don't. It's quite simple. And then this little closing statement at the bottom, she says, at the time of enjoying everything in awareness, this instruction, essence of all, arose in my mind. So just saying this arose spontaneously, and she jotted it down. All right, we'll take a little break and then we'll do questions after that. So I'll just, we'll have a break for maybe 5 minutes and then we'll come back. Okay. All right, so we're back now and we'll go into our question and answer phase. So you can pop your hand up if you know how to use the little hand in Zoom. You can pop your hand up and then I can call on you to talk. Or alternatively, if you don't know how to use the little hand, you can just start talking and we'll figure it out. Any questions? No? Is this because, so there's two reasons there's no questions I often find. It was all too much to take in, or it was all fine. We totally understood everything. Which of those is going on, do we think?
I think it was all fine.
Yes.
This is Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. And it just confirmed that you need to meditate and you've got a lot of work to do. Like you've just in your own, these are not the right words, but in your own head, in your mind, we've got the information. I found the information clear and I understand it. I'm not good yet. I have to work on myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
I have to perfect meditating and the quiet time and the genuine
rest.
Yes.
So the one thing that, so to sit in meditation until we start to feel joy in the practice, right? But that will happen. There will be a time when it all trips over, and for some people it happens very quickly, other people it takes a bit longer. But there is a moment where you start to feel real joy in sitting. So even if it is difficult, there's a sort of a joy there and you want to do it. So until that happens, the thing that motivates us to sit is to contemplate impermanence, which seems strange. But the reason we don't sit is because we believe in a fictional tomorrow when we will sit. But tomorrow might not come. So we need to sit today. And also, if we understood, we also avoid sitting sometimes. I'm not saying this is about you, this is just general. Also, sometimes people don't sit. They don't sit because they don't understand impermanence and they think, oh, tomorrow I'll do it, but tomorrow might not come. But then also, they don't quite believe that their mind can be transformed. So they believe they have not applied the idea of emptiness to their own mind and impermanence to their own mind. So they think, so there's a Lama called Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche who often says, you have to believe that the shirt is washable. So the shirt there is a metaphor for the mind. You have to believe that it can change. If you don't have that belief or understanding or trust, we won't sit down. Because why would we? If we think that we're always going to be like this, we're always going to like this, we're stuck, we'll never change. So there's three things there. Recognizing tomorrow may not ever come. So sit now. Recognizing that your mind can change. So it will be effective to sit. And then also understanding that though it might be boring now or painful now or frustrating now or uncomfortable now, in time, and maybe a quick time, it will become a joy in our life. So we have to kind of like get those three things happening. So sometimes it's just one of those things that stops us from sitting. Sometimes it's all three. So it seems like a strange thing to think, oh, I'm not sitting because usually we'll say, I'm not sitting because I'm busy. I'm not sitting because I don't really like it or something. But in essence, the real reason we're not sitting is because we haven't got impermanence. We think tomorrow will come. We think our mind is fixed and won't change or can't change. And we don't trust that the discomfort will go away and will be replaced with joy, or that the boredom will go away and be replaced with joy. We think the boredom is permanent. We think the pain is permanent because sometimes your back hurts and stuff like that. So it's about not really understanding impermanence. That's why we don't sit. So
I think it was very good what you said. I think it was last week. And I think this applies to myself, that you do need to make it a set time every day, like the same time, and get into the routine that is the time that you're going to sit quietly and meditate. And then if you have that set time each day, you're more likely to do it.
That's right. And also, I have a friend who's been meditating for years and years and years, and she's done many retreats, long retreats, but she didn't have a daily meditation practice. So she would go away for like a week or 2 weeks here or 3 weeks there, lots of meditation actually, but she didn't sit every single day. So, and she started to sit every single day and noticed how profound that was. Just to sit for a short time every day makes a massive difference. Even if you've been meditating for a long time and you've been going on long retreats, the daily thing is really important. And it doesn't have to be long. I think if you start with, so the way we do it, we sit for a little while and then we have a break. And in the break, we're maintaining our awareness in ordinary doing, ordinary life. And the break is just as important as the sitting part. So you do, I would start with, if you're totally new, I tell people 5 minutes, break for 1 minute, another 5 minutes, done. And then do that for a week or two, and then do, 10 minutes, a break of a minute or two, another 10 minutes, you're done, off with your week. And then 3 weeks, you get to 20 minutes break of 3 or 4 minutes, another 20 minutes, you're done. But really what you want is a half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour. That's what you want. You don't need actually much more than that, although more is good, but too much more, it can be a problem. You don't want to get attached to it, and you don't want to treat it like an extreme sport, So start with just 5 minutes and then a short break and then another 5 minutes. And then you do that for a week or two, and then you build up to 10 minutes. And then your aim is to get to 20 to 30 minutes a day minimum. But if you can do like 20, 30 minutes in the morning and then 20, 30 minutes at night, that's really ideal too. So little bit with the break in between, you'll get there. If you start with like an hour, I think my first ever meditation retreat was a week and I left on day one. I ran away and I went to a gay bar. So, you don't want to do like too much. You do a little bit. So, because you can push your, Jetson Pema said in a quick Q&A she did, I think last week or the week before, she said, You want to push your comfort zone just a little bit. If you push it too much, we won't do it, you know. And so something I've said before is you want to be leaning on your boundary, you know, just leaning on it gently in a relaxed way, not pushing, you know. So you just gently lean, it will sort of move. So it needs to be kind of quite relaxed. We have a very relaxed approach. Yeah.
Thanks, Pema.
You're most welcome. Anyone else want to ask something or say something or complain about something, except for politics or then, you know, anything else that's going to make us upset?
I've just got a little something to add there. One of the things that I found really helpful is that knowledge that underneath it all, underneath what you really are is it. Well, you already are is basically what I'm trying to say. Is you already are what you're trying to become. So this striving, I find, is counterproductive. It's it tends to give you this idea that you're trying to climb up a mountain, but you already are the mountain. Like you, all the only thing that's stopping you from being there is your own self, and even some of that sort of like thinking, oh, I've got, you know, oh, this is all too hard, or, you know. And I don't know, I guess it can be quite hard, but to know that you've just got to just take that top off, just get that top away so that you can actually see who you really are. And it's not that you're trying to, and you already are it. You just need to.
So that's exactly right. So that's why we have this relaxed approach, because there is actually nothing to achieve. It's already so that's why any kind of model or path that looks like a lot of striving and a lot of doing, you know, is not bad, but not necessarily going to get you there. You can do all of those things if you like them. That's the thing. You can do all those things if you like them, all those other things, you know, but ultimately it's about sitting, dropping whatever's going on and just allowing one's nature to shine through. So it is about resting, body, speech, and mind, all three. So you're right, to strive is counterproductive. As soon as you strive, because also striving is about the dualistic mind. It's like what is there to strive for? If, you know, I mean, you have to have someone here who wants to strive for something over there. So that's fully dualistic. So you just have to sort of drop everything. So very easy, but it's not effortless at first, but becomes effortless. So some little bit of effort needs to be put in, which is that 20 minutes a day.
Creating that space and that
same time every day, same cushion if you can. Those things really actually help the mind and the body to help the body to get into it. And then the other stuff that I haven't touched on today that are supercharging type things. So meditation will get you there eventually. If you want to get there fast, right, which we don't because we're already there. But if you want to be free and you want others to be free, right? If there's a deep yearning there that you want to be free and you want others to be free, then there's a couple of things that you can do to deepen it all and make it so that you can free yourself and others sooner. So, and those things both, one is very easy for Westerners to get our heads around, and that is basically bodhicitta or compassion. So, so to really offer freely and completely one's whole being, so that you're not clinging to yourself anymore. Offer to others. So that's bodhicitta or compassion. So to really do some compassion practice every day with our meditation is very supercharging. I know that some of you are doing Tonglen already. That's super good. But the really supercharging thing Ayu-Khandro did was chud, which is to do this actual practice where you actually offer every component of yourself, the dualistic self, to others, and are left with nothing. So often in the chud practices, there's a phrase that goes, with nothing held back, with nothing remaining, with nothing left over. And it means to really give everything psychologically, you know, to others. You don't have to give your car away or your dog or your jewelry or anything. It's about psychologically letting it all go and letting it be there for others, becoming a conduit of compassion for others. So, and the other thing that supercharges, which is very uncomfortable and unpleasant sometimes for Westerners, is devotion. So, and the reason that works is for the same reason that bodhicitta works. It's surrendering, giving up one's attachment to oneself, one's clinging to oneself, and becoming the conduit of another being's wisdom and compassion, and just being their instrument. So, and just doing whatever you can to make sure that that being's kindness reaches everyone, that being's wisdom reaches everyone. So both of these things that supercharge the process are about letting go of the self. Devotion and bodhicitta, they're equally good. So, but in the West, you know, we have got such trouble with devotion because there have been some non-realized beings taking advantage of students. So bodhicitta is a safer bet. You know, if you're concerned about that stuff, bodhicitta is a safer bet. And also, it means if you haven't met your teacher yet, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I really want to practice deeply, but I haven't met my teacher or da-da-da. You know, your compassionate heart's already there. Just use it. That's equal to practicing with the teacher. So it's they're equal and both powerful, and one's accessible right now if you don't have a teacher. So I think some kind of compassion practice each day is really helpful. But thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Quite right.
Thank you.
Striving is a waste of time.
Yes. Yeah. Just one other little note on that too is, you know, just when there's a lot of talk about, you know, bringing out your compassion and love and equanimity and all of that too. I guess my own experience has been it arises on its own. It has its own, it is what emerges of its, I mean, you like what you're saying about the, you know, devotion and all of those things, certainly, yes, that all helps to bring about these, you know, feelings of compassion and love. But it's not, it doesn't come of the ego, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It arises as all part of the same practice. It comes up on its own. It's not something that you need to go, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and this and that and that and that. It just sort of tends to just emerge.
Yeah. So I'm always rabbiting on about compassion arises naturally when you through shamatha, through sitting meditation, it arises naturally. So that is what I was talking about before when I was saying, like, you know, at first it's hard to sit, but then once that starts to happen, your natural compassion rises when you sit. Then it becomes really sort of joyful, and often people get really motivated and really want to sit. So what you're saying is that it's true. Yes, absolutely true, that compassion rises naturally. It doesn't need to be constructed. It doesn't need to be built. But what I'm saying is that's super. You can then build on that by doing a conscious practice around bodhicitta. So yes, it arises naturally in your practice, but you can kind of make that more, bigger, greater, less sound. Yeah.
Sorry. I get exactly what you're saying. And the other little point is that, you know, when sometimes it's just, what do they call it when you have spiritual bypassing? And if you, that's just that little part where you have to be careful whether it's your ego that's sort of going, I must be like this, and this is, I'm going to show how compassionate and loving that I am, or if it's arising on its own.
So we're not talking about public displays. We're talking about on your cushion. So the bodhicitta practice I'm talking about is not anything anyone else would see.
No.
So it's just even yourself would care about. So it's about a practice in which you give of yourself psychologically. Like you just psychologically go through a process of giving yourself up to other beings. You do it on the cushion. And then that bodhicitta that rises naturally the compassion that rises naturally when you sit in meditation, it will become bigger, and it will have fewer constraints, and it will come more easily. And you'll find that as well, the recognition of emptiness comes more quickly, because they're the same. Like they say, like bodhicitta, compassion and wisdom of meditation, right, are more closely intimate than the two sides of a hand. So they're not even that separate. They're the one. Right. They're the one thing. And so you can get deep into the wisdom of emptiness, which is what happens when you meditate, through compassion, and you can get to pure, unbound, limitless compassion through your meditation, because they're the same thing. They're co-emergent. So when you sit down to sit and you're letting the mind settle, that's the wisdom side of that co-emergent unity. And when you do an actual, so what does that sitting have? It has a posture, physical posture, and it has a mental posture. Leave everything alone, just let it all go. And it has silence as a speech posture, right? So with bodhicitta, you also have postures of body, speech, and mind, right? That you do that are not the same as sitting meditation. And they awaken the heart in a profound way that will also feed into your wisdom around emptiness. They're the same. So it's like a different meditation that will give rise to both things in the same way that the other meditation does. But it's not something you do in front of others, or you say, because the point is, if you go out, and this is why I have historically been a little bit like, meditation is very, very, very important. Yes, be kind. Yes, help, but never give up your sitting, because it's really important. So this, and the reason is, when you're out helping, is what you're saying. It can be ego feeding. You know, I'm a good person. I'm doing good. You know, it can be ego feeding. So this is just on your cushion. It's just you. You know?
So there's no chance of it being the ego coming in there, does it? Because the ego is general.
There's a little tiny bit, yes, because you're witness to yourself. Yes, you're witnessing yourself giving yourself up. So there's a little bit of like, a little bit, yes, but it will diminish as you give up. You're also giving that up. So, I mean, and, you know, it is very effective. So, and if you don't have a living teacher for whom you feel a natural devotion, right, the level of heartfelt openness and surrender that you need, right, to be free is unmatched by what you can achieve through practicing with a teacher, or the chud of giving oneself up. So, and I did promise a few people that I would teach chud at some point. I haven't done that yet because I don't do it in the traditional way. And I wasn't sure anyone would be interested in the non-traditional way. So, but it's very simple, and I kind of just told you what it is. Completely on the cushion thing where you just give yourself up, you know. But I can maybe jot something down or something if you're interested. Anyway, I need to wind up because I don't want to make people sit here forever.
No, I feel as though I've taken up too much.
No, you have not.
But thank you very much.
You have not. We all have the same Buddha nature. We all have the ability and the right to speak.
Okay, I shall mute.
Saying goodbye, I think, in the chat. I don't know how to get the chat up at the moment. Yeah, I'll find it later. All right, so any other questions before we wind up for the day? Comments? Jibes? No?
Just to say thank you, Pema, for a beautiful program. It's been very enriching. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
Is that Leonie?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
A
Beautiful.
little light went on to tell me that it was you. Thank you very much. So those of you who don't know, we have like a monthly study group, this is part of Jalu, but I do a free monthly program, which is basically Buddhist fundamentals, which I do for the University of Southern Queensland's multi-faith service. So, and that's also online. And if you go to the website where you clicked to get into here, it's there as a study group, and you can join at any point. That's starting again at the end of this month. And then also I've just formed for my German friend Rinjan, a Buddha Nature study group. A Buddha Nature meditation group. So where we will be doing meditations on Buddha Nature very early in the morning, 7:30 in the morning on Fridays for the next 3 months. So you're welcome to join that too if you want, and that's also free. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Like I am very moved by people who want to practice, and very grateful that there are human beings who actually care about their own freedom and the freedom of other beings. And it moves me deeply that people spend their time doing this, like 2 hours on a Saturday here, an hour here and there, and doing morning meditations or whatever you do. You know, it really moves me that there are people doing that, and that because it gives me heart that we care, that there are beings who care. That's really important to me. All right, I love you all. I'm going to do a little dedication, which you can do with me if you like. By this effort, may all beings be free of fear, sorrow, and pain. May all beings know wellness, tranquility, and love. May all beings abide in the perfect bliss of the great perfection. Om. Om. Okay. I'm happy to chat for a little while if you guys